Hi, everybody. Welcome to GPJFF in Conversation. I am here with two special guest stars. I'm Elliot Ratzman. I'm visiting assistant professor at Grinnell College, teaching courses in Jewish studies and African American studies. I'm here with director Brad Rothschild, who directed our film. He is also the director-producer of other films, African Exodus, Tree Man, Kinderblock 66, Return to Buchenwald, and here with the star of our film, Tamar Manasseh, soon to be Rabbi Tamar Manasseh, who is founder and president of Mothers Against Senseless Killings Chicago. I want to welcome you two to our Philadelphia Jewish Film Festival. I have a bunch of questions for you, if I may. So I think the first question might be, if Tamar, might you be able to tell us a bit what happens after the film was edited? What has happened to Mass since then? What is the situation? Let's say pre-COVID, and then we'll get into what happens after COVID.
Okay, pre-COVID was basically what you saw in the movie. And honestly, it's really hard right now to even remember what life was like before COVID. It was, there were things that happened after the editing, but before the movie premiered, because literally maybe Brad, a month, maybe 3 weeks after the movie premiered, COVID hit and it shut everything down. And so when everything shut down, we went to work. It just, things got a bit more, not a bit more, a lot harder. There was a lot more work to do. I don't think we've ever been as busy on that block as we are now. The summer used to be our busy season. Now we're out year round. When we wrap the movie, on that corner, it's not a vacant lot anymore. It's actually a school that we built out of shipping containers. And so at first that was going to be a trade school. And it was for young adults because all of the high schools in the neighborhood had been closed down. All of the public high schools had been all closed by the city. And so we had all of these young people who weren't going to school. So we decided we were going to help them get GEDs, help them learn trades, life skills, things like that to keep them moving forward in life. And then COVID happened. And we were nearly done. And we had to retrofit these trade school classrooms, these shipping containers, as classrooms for elementary school kids. So March 17th, we opened our doors. We had kids because, I mean, as you saw in the neighborhood, it's a poor neighborhood. And a lot of the people that work there are those really badly paid essential workers. And they had to have something to do with their kids because they had to go to work. Because if you don't go to work, then you can't get public assistance and you can't afford childcare. So there were a lot of people that were faced with the dilemma: do I go to work and leave my kids at home alone, or do I lose my job and lose everything that goes with that? So we didn't want parents to have to make those choices. So we did what we do. If the kids aren't in school, we're on that block. So every day we had kids there. When COVID first started, when all of the closures first started happening, we opened our doors. And we had kids there every day, and we were working with them doing e-learning and making sure they still got meals and adult supervision and all of those things. And we just doing that we started doing so much other stuff just because of that. Because now, because kids needed to be tutored, we now know that our community has a huge adult literacy issue. And we may have known that it was there before, but we didn't know to what degree, the scope of how large it was. And so there are so many parents who can't help their kids. We had kids who were doing e-learning who didn't have the devices to actually keep up with the classes. And if they did have the devices, they didn't have broadband, they didn't have the Wi-Fi. So we've been working on providing kids in our community with all of those things, and with the support that they need in person in our classrooms and online. We created a program called the Study Buddy program, where kids can be remotely tutored from their homes. Because right now, the thing about COVID is it has presented, of course, a huge public health issue, but it's going to create an educational one after this. Once we figure out COVID, once there's a vaccine and we get past this, there is going to be a massive educational crisis in this country because of what COVID created in so many of these kids in communities all over. So we're really trying to get ahead of that. So that's what's happened pretty much since the movie was edited.
So your support and mass support of the community, as we see in the film, is tremendous. But who is supporting these this school, and who has your back now? Has the profile been amplified because of the documentary, or are there partnerships with nonprofits and city and state agencies since the film?
Oh yeah, no, we still don't get any state funding or city or federal, nothing like that. It's still literally people like the people who watch this movie. It is like those donations, those high donations, those $18, those $36 donations. It's still that happening. And I mean, it has been amplified. Our profile and our message has been amplified because of the movie. So we bring in a bit more now, but we still fund the school. We still fund all of this. And so, I mean, like, honestly, it would be really great to get assistance from, other organizations and from government agencies. But honestly, I don't think we would be able to do what we do the way we do it if we did. And so we really want to continue to make the kind of impact that we're making now. So it's probably best that, I mean, the government is not running so well right now, that they just kind of stay out of our classrooms and let us keep doing what we do with our kids.
Yeah, as Chicago patron Saint Saul Alinsky once said, low overhead, low entanglements, high independence.
Exactly. That's exactly, yes. Couldn't have said it better myself. Absolutely.
So Brad, could you talk a bit about how you discovered Tamar and how you two got together? I know there was it sounded like there was some turbulence at the beginning and some distrust.
He stalked me. He stalked me. He was stalking me. Yes. Nicely.
I wouldn't call it turbulence or distrust. I would just call it maybe she was a little bit trepidatious in the beginning. Maybe because she didn't know who I was, and I did actually cyberstalk her in a very non-threatening way. And also, quite frankly, she's modest. So I read about Tamar in the JTA, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, in October 2016, and the article was called "Black Rabbinical Student Takes on Gun Violence on the South Side of Chicago." And I look at this headline and I think, okay, this is interesting. What's going on? And I see at the top of the article, there's a picture of this striking woman named Tamar Manasseh. And I'm reading about the amazing work that she's doing with MASK, Mothers and Men Against Senseless Killing. And she's on the same corner every day on the south side of Chicago. And she is building community where no community existed. But what really caught my attention was the fact that Tamar said that it was because she's Jewish that she needs to do something to tackle this issue. And when I read that, I thought, I want to meet this person, I want to talk to this person, and I want to make a film about this person. So I reached out to her, in this day and age, even though I didn't know her, I could get to her via social media and from her organization's website. And I sent her an email and I introduced myself as a filmmaker in New York City. And I said, I think you'd make a really interesting subject for a documentary. So she didn't respond immediately. It took a little while. Finally, I got an email back saying, I think my life is about as interesting as watching the paint dry. So thank you for your interest, but no thank you. And I wrote back and I said, with all due respect, Tamar, I disagree with you, and I would really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and maybe you would reconsider. So, the turbulence, as you described it, is really this kind of back and forth that we had intermittently online, where I would just make sure that she remembered that I was alive and that I was interested in pursuing this project. And sometimes she would respond to me and sometimes she wouldn't. And then we actually talked on the phone, I think twice. And each time I got off the phone and I thought to myself, she's even more incredible than I originally thought. And I have to do this project somehow. And then one day she sent me a direct message on Facebook and she said, I'm in Staten Island. I can meet you now if you want. And just to clarify, I live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. While Staten Island is technically part of New York City, it is nowhere near where I live. So I said, give me 2 hours and I'm coming to Staten Island. And I dropped what I was doing and I drove out to Staten Island and I sat down with Tamar and we talked for a long time. And at the end of the conversation, she looked at me and she kind of shrugged her shoulders and she said, you know, if you really want to do this, we can film this summer. And that was it. That we started filming that summer.
I think there's a rabbinical pattern to sort of push away the penitent for 3 times. So
he pushed me away more than 3 times.
Tamar, I read online, actually I listened to you say during an interview, you said, the most Jewish thing I can do is sit on that corner and make sure people are treated justly, have food, treated with respect and dignity, that this is part of Tikkun Olam, to see the crack, and our job is to repair the flaw. Others see problems, I see cracks. Could you sort of unpack that distinction between seeing problems and seeing cracks?
Problems are sometimes things that are made to be completely insurmountable. They're enormous. Nobody wants to deal with them, and they just fester. And then they become chasms, and it's no coming back from it sometimes. Sometimes people's problems can completely take them under. Now, if you have a crack in your roof, you're not going to sell your house. You're going to fix the crack in your roof. That's what you're going to do. That's what this is. That's what this is for me. That's what this world is for me. We aren't just going to, throw it away. So we have to do the best that we can with it while it's here. We have to make sure that when we leave this place, we leave it better for the generations that come behind us, just as the generations that went before us tried to leave it better for us. That's our job. We have to do that because we're not getting another one of these. We're not going to just be able to say this one isn't working for us anymore, so we don't want it. That's not how it goes. And a lot of people, I mean, just the way that they've been, they don't believe that they have as big of a role, that they can play as big of a role in the salvation of this world, communities of this country, as they can. They feel powerless. And so when you look at problems and you feel powerless, sometimes those problems can take you under. Then sometimes you can just, ignore them, and because they're just too big to confront. So you just ignore them, and then they get to be these issues that, they're nearly impossible to correct. I don't feel like that. I feel like if I look at them as cracks, it's something that is manageable. I can manage this. It may take me a while to manage it. It may be a big job, but I know that I can manage it. And I don't feel so overcome with the problems of the world, with the issues that we see in our world, because I know that it's something I can do about it. I don't feel so helpless. I don't feel so hopeless because I'm working on it. Even if I'm working on it a little bit every day, even if you can't see the progress, I know I'm working on it. So I know progress is being made. And just the idea that I can do something, it changes the way that I see myself in the world. It changes the way I see the world. I can still find good in it because I know it's a corner of it that I'm still committed to working on. There are cracks that I'm still committed to fixing. And I mean, they're going to get fixed because I am committed to working on them every day. So eventually it'll get fixed. But at least I know we're going somewhere. We're getting somewhere. We're making some progress. Can't imagine living in a world where I feel like I'm standing still, where I feel like I'm inconsequential and I don't matter, insignificant. I can't imagine living in a world like that. I couldn't live like that. I have to feel like I'm making a contribution. I'm doing something. I'm getting something done. I'm standing up for myself. I'm making some sort of progress. I have to feel like that. And as long as I look at them as issues, as cracks, and look at myself as the carpenter or the bricklayer or the handy woman or whoever that's doing the repairs, I know that I'm getting somewhere. And it gives me the will to fight another day.
So from this perspective, how can you, after COVID, what kind of cracks are we seeing that are repairable in the area? And maybe also, what are the bigger problems, the more glacial problems that need to be addressed? But let's start with like the practical. What are the cracks that you're seeing? You mentioned of computers.
Broadband, like how everyone doesn't have equal access to broadband. And I mean, kids aren't, there are families who are in some cases being asked to pay upwards of $200 a week for broadband. These people are poor. Nobody can afford that. So $800 a month is what some people pay in rent. And I mean, so they can't afford that. So what happens to those kids who can't keep up? What happens to them? And so, like, you know, we'll start there. Just the digital divide is enormous. And then just what we've seen since we've actually had kids in our classrooms who are kids that come from public schools. You know, people want the schools to open back up, but you really have to look at what have public schools been teaching your kids and what haven't they been teaching them? Because that is the silver lining in this kind of thing for me, in this COVID epidemic, in the pandemic for me. We got to stop the clock for a minute and we got to assess where our kids are. We got to see where they really are. And so we've had kids in our classroom since September 10th, I think. That's the first day of school. And just the things that we now understand that they don't know, that we first assumed that they did know, and things that we may have known when we were their age, they don't know it. So how do these kids, how do they stay competitive? How do they become competitive? How do they keep up in the world that we're going into? How does that work when they don't have broadband and they can't do timetables when they're in 5th grade and they can't find Africa on a map when they're in 8th grade? How do they keep up? How do they function in a world in a decade? How do they compete for the jobs that will exist in a decade? They don't. They go to jail. They become, that's what happens. They die. And so I think just being able to kind of assess those things, that's like, you know, just on a micro level, it's what are public schools teaching our kids versus what should they be teaching them and what we want them to teach them. So I think I would probably start with that because that is like nearest and dearest to my heart, of course. But I mean, this has just exposed all of the disparities in healthcare, the disparities in I mean, just income. There are so many young people. My daughter was one who was forced to go to work during COVID, or she would get fired. And it's not like she makes a lot of money, but her health wasn't as important to her job as their bottom line was. And there are a lot of people who are forced to make those choices. So we have to really look at how we treat the poor and who are the poor people in this country. And it's almost like you see, it's like people are just like disposable now. And it shouldn't be that way. So this has just exposed a lot of issues that America has. And honestly, I don't see how any of this changes if there's not some sort of change that a monumental change that we see on election day. I don't see how any of this changes. I just see how those problems deepen and get worse. That's what happens.
Some of the voices in the film were talking about urging you to run. There was also, it seemed, I think there were a few politicians maybe who had stopped by. I wasn't quite clear. What wisdom do you have for us about the relationship between sort of the policy level change and how politics actually works in a machine city? I mean, we're here in Philadelphia, which is...
You have to break the whole damn thing. It's as simple as that. It has to be broken down and rebuilt better. This is going to take bottom-up change, not top-down change. The people at the bottom have to eventually become the people on the top, because the people on the top are too far up to hear the moans and the groans of the people that they crush on the bottom. And the people on the bottom are too far down to even see where their problems really come from. That's why you see so much violence in poor neighborhoods. We blame each other. The frustration, we take out the frustration of that bad policies and failed policies and things like that. We take out that frustration on each other instead of the people who actually put these policies in place. They come around and they knock on our door and they tell us what they want, what we want to hear when it's time, for an election, but we don't hear from them any other time. And most people don't know why. They don't know who's responsible for their lot in life. They don't know why they live the way that they live. They don't know why their garbage doesn't get picked up. They don't know why the police abuse them in their neighborhoods. They don't know why this happened. So they just get frustrated and they blame each other. They turn on each other. That's how it goes.
The relationship between, let's say, the neighborhood in the corner and the police in the film, there were moments of tension. There also seemed to be slight moments of cooperation or a bit of progress. Could you maybe paint a picture a bit about what is the larger relationship between policing and the South Side? How might that change from the bottom up perspective? How might policing be done better?
I think, like in the movie, you saw that one cop, and like I told Brad, what did I tell you the day that you saw that cop? The day we shot that, what did I tell you was going to happen?
So this was, you're referring to in the beginning when you see the cop on the corner hanging out with everybody and having a good time. That was the first day of the summer. And this was our first shoot day. And I thought, and I went up to Tamar afterwards. I said, look, that's awesome. This cop was here. He had a great time. He was interacting with people. I said, that's pretty good. And Tamar looked at me and said, you will never see that cop around here again. And she was absolutely right. We never saw him again.
Never again. The police we don't have a relationship with the police. We have a contentious relationship at best. And I mean, just over the summer, I personally, I went and sat down with the police and I told them there was going to be a funeral. And I said, this funeral is going to be really, really scary. I said, there's going to be violence at this funeral. You need all hands on deck for this. You need everybody that you can possibly get. Pull people off desks if you have to. You need everybody there to make sure you do security at this funeral. They didn't send anyone and 15 people were shot at the funeral. And then they gave a press conference and said that they didn't have credible information when the reporters in the room who were questioning them at this press conference had the information. I sent them the copy of all of the text messages, of all of the correspondence between me and the police. So 15 people were shot. Many of those people were children, all because of the relationship that the people have with the police. And right now, honestly, I don't think the police are in any place to protect anybody. I don't think that they're in any place to actually police anybody, to tell you the truth. I think the police need to work out the issues that they have internally. Before they can get along with other people, they need to learn to get along with each other. And I mean, we're seeing, that more breaks between, Black and white cops, especially when you think about what's happening now with the police unions endorsing President Trump. That's a problem for a lot of Black cops. And so there are things that they need to work out before they can be anybody that I would trust to ever serve and or protect me. They really do. They have stuff they need to work out. And like I suggested, why not pay people in the neighborhood to do what we do? To actually sit on their own corners. Why not pay the people to police? Start a civilian policing corps. Why not? If we're going to that's what defunding the police means to me. Out of the police budget, pay people who don't have jobs to actually sit on their blocks, sit on their corners. Start the policing in their own homes. So, and make it merit-based. So if my kid is the one, and I know my kid has guns and I know my kid might be the one doing the shooting, I'm going to stop him from doing it before he leaves my house, because I know that if I don't stop him, I don't get paid. If my kid goes and shoots somebody in the neighborhood, I don't get paid. So now it's in my best interest to make sure that my kid doesn't do that. And honestly, there are a lot of parents, there are a lot of kids who are out here doing stuff in the streets because they do help their parents. So if your parents had a job, if your mom had a job, and she could afford to pay all of the bills alone, you might not be out shooting anybody. You might not have to be out selling drugs. You might not have to do any of those things. And it's kind of like, you don't need as many police. We've been on that corner for 6 years. We've dialed 911, I think, twice. And that wasn't even for things that were happening on our block. And it's kind of like, when you let people take care of themselves, when you empower the people to look after themselves and to take care of their own communities, they'll do it. And I mean, just think of how much you can save on wrongful death suits, police misconduct suits. Just think of how much you can save, because that's not happening, because the people, this civilian policing corps only calls the police out for certain things. They don't call the police out for petty things that go on the block, for fights between kids and things. They don't call for that. They don't call for, it's a car sitting outside a house and it looks suspicious. They don't call for those things. I just think that, I mean, until we get to a place where police understand that they're here to serve and respect us, not to neglect and wreck us, I think the best thing is for the people to do the policing. That would be the best thing.
Yeah, this is obviously the issue that has emerged in the last few months around the murder of George Floyd, and debates within the Jewish press and the Jewish community too about what is the Jewish community's relationship to the police, where predominantly white Jewish communities see the police as the friendly cops who stand outside of the synagogue on the high holidays, and so there's an interesting tension, as you know, within the predominantly white Jewish community about how to think about being good allies to African Americans in general and Black Jews in particular. Do you have any advice for how white Jews should be thinking about their relationship to the police, how that might change?
White Jews have the same relationship with the police that white people have. Black Jews have the same relationship with police that Black people have. People like me, I can understand how white Jews might feel like these people stand outside to protect them on the high holy days, and these guys are officer friendly. It's completely different being part of the group of people that the police are protecting those people from. It's really difficult to be part of the group that is corralled in one neighborhood, that's profiled when we go past a certain street or into a certain neighborhood. It's really hard being those people, and no one thinks about that. No one thinks about the flip side. What is done to make you feel safe? Who's made to feel unsafe to make you feel safe? And that's the part that we don't think about. And that's what we have to talk about as Jews. We've been talking a lot about Judaism and race for the past couple of days, Brad and I. And the thing has to be that white Jews have to understand that there is a certain amount of privilege that comes along with whiteness, with being white. Because if you get pulled over and you tell the cop, I'm a Jew, I don't want that ticket, they're gonna laugh at, I'm not white, I'm Jewish, and I don't want the ticket. They're going to laugh at you and tell you to go about your business. But if I get pulled over and I tell the police, I'm not Black, I'm Jewish, I may not make it out alive. So therein lies, that's a conversation that we really, really need to have. I understand that, Jews don't support, just a lot of the stuff that goes on just what white Christians do or just white non-Jews do. I get that. But it's kind of like white Jews have the benefit of, they get the privilege, but none of the shame that comes along with being white. With none of the historical shame, any of the things that caused the rift between the Black and white communities in America, with none of the historical BS. They don't have that, because, hey, my family didn't own slaves. So, but yet you still benefit from white privilege that I don't. And Black people are still on the very bottom of the rung on the social ladder in America. You're not anymore. So there are things, this is a conversation we really need to have, and it's really uncomfortable. And I get that. But I think once we get past the discomfort is where we make real progress. I was just telling somebody earlier in a conversation, just to say, for me to say white Jew is uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable. It sounds like there's so much more to Ashkenazi Jews than just being white. And there's just so much more to me than being a Black Jew. So maybe we should just be Jews, because I'm not a Jew of color, but it's easier for people to look at me and say, oh, she's a Jew of color. No, I'm not. I'm a Black Jew. But it's easier to say Jew of color because it doesn't have that the history that comes along with Blackness in America or whiteness in America. It doesn't have that. A Jew of color doesn't have that, and an Ashkenazi Jew doesn't have it. But a Black Jew and a white Jew, we have a different set of issues.
Well, let's turn for a minute. I want to ask you two, what got left on the cutting room floor of this film? I didn't see in the DVD extras, or what are the shots that you almost got but didn't quite, or were kind of sad that didn't make it into the final cut? Then we'll circle back to
who are you should ask Brad that. Is that for me or Brad?
Let's start with Brad, and then if you
What really pained me to leave on the cutting room floor was all of the interplay between Tamar and Kendra. Their relationship is fantastic and hysterical, and more often than not, completely inappropriate, not safe not for children, but it's hysterical. And we all had a great time, actually. The cameraman, Dan Coleman, and I really had a good time watching the interplay, and sometimes even getting involved in the interplay between Tamar and Kendra. They're hysterical. It's, sometimes they call themselves Lucy and Ethel. Sometimes they'll call themselves Laverne and Shirley. It would be like the R-rated version of Laverne and Shirley. For profanity.
Is there a lap dance in there somewhere that made it in?
It was free. It was free. It was a free lap dance. It was free. Nobody's just giving those things away, okay?
Out on the block. And that was among the Tamar interactions. So there was just a lot of funny things that, we thought like, oh, we should just do a movie on the two of them. And but there were also some other subjects that sort of didn't make it in. And there's nothing, I can honestly say there's nothing when I look at the film now that I say, wow, I really wish we hadn't taken this out. There were a couple of things. We filmed a Halloween party on the block, which was really interesting and fun for a lot of different reasons. And there were some issues, or not issues, there were some subjects that we had talked about, or we had filmed Tamar talking about that day. And it just didn't work from the narrative perspective. It just didn't flow well. And plus, you have to limit you don't have an unlimited amount of time. So we definitely, we left out, there was an entire section that we just took out because as much as we liked it, the editor, Connor Callista, and I, we really liked it, but we had to make decisions. There was also the trip to the Carolinas. There is an extended cut with Tamar really going off about the Confederate statues. I'm talking like another 7 or 8 minutes of that. And it was also really profound. Her emotions were raw and so accessible to her. And it was very powerful, but it became too long. So we left in what we felt was the most important parts of this, and we took out things that need to be said. Still, we felt like we said what we needed to say, even though we could have said it with a few extra minutes. But those are really the only things that stand out in my mind that we could have that we had struggled with to leave out.
Tamar, were there any scenes that you were hoping would get in that didn't get in? Like what happened to that 7-minute rant?
Oh no, you didn't want to see the 7-minute rant. I'm kind of glad that did not make it. We would be having a much different conversation had it actually made it in. Honestly, you know, Brad is a really, he's a really great filmmaker, but Brad himself kind of became a part of the story. And I really hate that you didn't really get to see the way that Brad changed and how he developed, how his character developed, because he's a character in the movie. You just don't see him. Brad knows everybody on the block, and everybody on the block knows Brad. And it's kind of like he's just a fixture now. He's one of us. And I really do wish that people could see how that happened. And it's he was learning so much, and you could tell he was learning so much, and the people were learning so much about him. They let the kids play with the drone and let the kids look through the camera, and they talked about filmmaking with all of these things. And you don't get to see those things because Brad was making a movie about me. But I really do believe that the movie, the next movie, he has to be in it, or we're not doing a movie, Brad, if you're not going to be in it. Because I really do want people to see how relaxed Brad was. Brad worked the barbecue grill. Brad went and got stuff out of people's cars. Brad, I mean, he served food. He did all sorts of whatever it is that everybody else did. Brad did it when he was there too. And he wasn't uncomfortable. He wasn't afraid. None of those things happened. And it's like, I really do wish that you could film the relationship, not just between Kendra and I, but between Brad and I as well, and how that developed. Like, I mean, by the time we got to the end of the movie, like, Brad is like my BFF. I can't imagine not returning his calls and his smoke signals and his skywriting for months and months and months and months. I can't imagine that, because we actually have a real friendship now. And it's kind of like we're building all of this stuff around this friendship, but nobody gets to see it because he's behind the camera and not in front of it.
That's really sweet. Brad, let's talk for just a minute about your other films. For example, we're all in quarantine, so where can we see these other films? Where are they streamed? Are they in Fandor?
That's a great question. So Tree Man had been on Netflix for a long time. And we just recently, I guess the contract with Netflix expired, and we're now working with our distributor to get it onto other video on demand platforms. So hopefully in the fall, in the late fall and early winter, in the holiday season, we'll be able to see that again. But for now, it's not really available. African Exodus, if people are interested in that film, you can go to redcoralreleasing.com, redcoral.com, and look for African Exodus, and you can rent African Exodus. And Kinderblock 66 also at redcoral.com.
And this film, where will it be? Or there are no plans?
So right now we're doing the Jewish Film Festival circuit, and we've screened the film so far. I was counting earlier today. We've done about 22 festivals, and we have another 7 or 8 lined up for the next month or so. And then we're going to have to see where it's going to go. Also probably video on demand platforms, but we're not sure yet. But Menemsha Films is the distributor of the film, and we have a website, theyaintreadyforme.com. There's a Facebook page, so we're updating the Facebook page more than anything else. So that's where, once we know where people can watch the film, that's where it'll be.
I haven't seen African Exodus, but I suspect it documents a very sad and unhappy story about African migrants in Israel. That's right.
That is correct. Go on.
So, looking at these two films, I want to say that I believe in the white Jewish community, for the most part, especially the non-Orthodox part, thinks of itself as Jews as an anti-racist community on some level. That is the memory of the story of Black Jewish Alliance, the commitments to democratic values, anti-racist values, as we might put it today. But the Israel situation is so vexed with different forms of racialization and racial disparities. What was the reaction, if I may ask you, like the reaction from Jewish audiences, from African Exodus, and from this film, which paints a kind of better picture of a Jewish relationship with African Americans in general, Black Jews in particular.
Yeah, even before I finished making African Exodus, I would have people tell me that I shouldn't be telling this story, that this isn't something that we want to put out in front of the world because it makes Israel look bad. And it's funny because only with a country like Israel can somebody make a film about African asylum seekers and have people say, this film is anti-Zionist or anti-Israel. It's not a critique of Israel's existence or Israel's right to exist or anything. It's a look at one specific policy that a country, a sovereign country, is pursuing. The fact that the country happens to be Israel, and that's part of the story, but it's not a question of, well, Israel's mistreating African asylum seekers, so Israel is illegitimate. That's not the point of the film. So people were against the film just in the concept of the film, in theory, because people are so afraid of criticizing Israel. You're giving ammunition to our enemies, that kind of thing. And that was not the intention. The intention was really to shine a light on this one particular issue. And I found out about this years ago now. I have a cousin who lives in Israel who's involved with an organization that was helping asylum seekers who had escaped genocide in Darfur. And he called me to tell me what he was doing. And he said, you should come out here and start filming this because this is a very important story. And at the time, the idea was, okay, here we have genocide survivors coming to a country that was established by survivors of a different genocide. What obligation does Israel have to help other survivors of genocide? When I got to Israel, it became clear to me very quickly that not all of the asylum seekers were from Darfur. A lot of them were from South Sudan and from Eritrea. And each of these areas are terrible in their own right, but there wasn't a genocide going on in either of those places. So it was a more complicated story, or it turned into a more complicated story as far as I was concerned. But at the core of it, it's still, what does any Western country owe to people who are escaping genocide, escaping terror, escaping murder, and throwing themselves at the mercy of a country? And we have, the UN has rights, that people have rights under the UN Charter, and asylum seekers have rights, and refugees have rights. But really what we see, and not just in Israel, but all over the Western world, is there is a lack of willingness to allow people in and allow people to work and live with dignity. So that when I compare African Exodus to They Ain't Ready for Me, the similarities I see are what happens when civil society steps in because government refuses to take any responsibility to help people. So I feel like these are two similarities. But like you said, this story is a happy story, quote unquote. It's a good story. It's a story that Jewish people feel better about because they feel better about themselves for it. They see what Tamar is doing in the name of Judaism, and they think, this is incredible, because it is incredible. And they should think that. But I don't want people to feel that they should watch this and think, wow, Tamar's great, and I'm happy to be Jewish, but I don't really need to do anything more than that. I think the lesson is that what Tamar shows us is that we all have to do something.
Yeah, this is also a problem for when I'm teaching courses to Catholics about the Holocaust, which I've done over the last few years, and they find out that both the deficiencies or drawbacks of the Catholic Church during that time, it's an anti-Semitism, but also, but they can find someone to cheer because there's the nun or the priest who rescued a family.
Yeah.
So all of our traditions are shot through with these contradictions. With the Jewish state,
yeah,
right, doing lacking on its responsibility, shirking its responsibility. And we have other Jews who are trying to make up the slack.
Yeah.
So it depends which part of the tradition you hold on to, but we can't ignore that dark side.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And one of the things I tried to highlight in African Exodus are the Israeli Jews who were helping, who were using their Judaism as a springboard to activism. We have one of the characters in the film is an artist who saw what was happening in Tel Aviv, in the south part of Tel Aviv, and started a soup kitchen where every night he would go out and feed refugees in the park. And because he did that, because his grandparents were Holocaust survivors. So he used his Jewish values and his Jewish history to help people. And that also, again, that's Tamar in her own way.
Great. Well, we're coming down to our last few minutes. I wanted to talk soon to be Rabbi Tamar a bit about your own faith community and what you are going to do once you have smicha in a few weeks, right?
Yeah.
For your plans. Oh, and I do want to ask if we can get this in. So in the film, you visit your grandmother's family. How does your family go from McNair to Manasseh? What's from Baptist to Jew? If we can.
That we don't have enough time for that. We do not have enough time for that. It is there's a lot of stories. There's a lot that happened somewhere in between North Carolina and Inglewood. A lot went on. A lot happened.
This should go in your memoir. Should go in the book that you must write.
Yeah, this will go in the memoir. It's a worthy story. Black Jews, the thing about us is it's not so much a conversion as it is a reversion, because who knows who we were before we were taken and put on those ships? Who knows? Our civilizations were completely disrupted. Our development was completely disrupted, and so it's kind of like, we had to start all over as something else that somebody created. So it was a lot of stuff that we had to unlearn and unknow to get back to who we originally were. And I feel like that is what Manasseh is. It is getting back to what we originally were. It gets back to Joseph and Asenath giving birth to an African baby in Egypt. That's what it is. So like that's what that is for me. It's a reclaiming of that. It's a going back for me. That's what it is. But what will I do once I become a rabbi? Exactly what I've been doing. Exactly what I've been doing. I've been working. I've been doing this for a long time. The last time I actually sat in a classroom was 7 years ago. I've been done with this program for a really long time. So I was trained to be a rabbi a long time ago, and I've been doing that job every day since. And it's not like me receiving smicha in some way is going to change my effort. It's going to change my drive. It's going to change my dedication or my focus. It's not. It's basically, it's almost, I'm not going to say it's a piece of paper, but the thing about it is, God doesn't call the qualified. God qualifies the called. I was qualified for this a long time ago. It just took a long time for those guys to catch up with it. So, like I told my rabbi, I said, I'm really busy. Like, I have a lot going on right now. So if you want to, we can just drop the certificate in the mail or something, because I have a lot going on. But that is the work. It's the work. The work is what's important. It's not what people are willing to finally recognize that I do. It doesn't matter what people recognize. It doesn't matter that they now say, oh, you're worthy. No, the people said I was worthy a long time ago. God said I was worthy a long time ago. So they're late to the party. That's it. So, I can't see my life changing very much going from Tamar to Rabbi Tamar. It's kind of like, it's always been who I am. This is who I am. It's in me. This is how it goes. And I challenge myself. I've always challenged myself to do more, be more, work harder. So I can't see what a title will do. I can't see what that'll do. I can't see how that changes the job. I don't see it. Although, let me take that back. I do get to park in those clergy parking spaces. So I am pretty excited about that. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm pretty excited. If I can't get a handicap parking placard, I can get the clergy parking placard. That's what I'm gonna do. Yes.
Nice.
It's a good perk.
Well, Brad, should thank you for initiating this project, and Tamar, we should thank you for being the Lamed Vavnik that you are. As we're leaving here, maybe if you could say a word about how people who are interested in supporting Mass might go about doing that, or other projects, maybe you know in Philly or your own catchment area there on the south side.
Oh, well, Mask is expanding. So right now, what we're doing is we're doing a Thanksgiving drive where we're buying 1,000 meals for Thanksgiving. And we are passing out those meals in Illinois, in Indiana, in Tennessee, and in Mississippi. So each meal is $25. It feeds a family of 4. You can go to our GoFundMe. You can find the link on our page and on Facebook, and you can donate there. And we're honestly, what I'm doing when I go places now, I've actually started reaching out to the Jewish communities in each of these places to actually connect them with the Black communities in these places too. So we're looking forward to having the Jews in Memphis come out with us and help do the giveaway in a couple of weeks when we do it. I'm super excited about that. We are really focused on bridge building and growing. So that's what I'm working on right now. So www.ontheblock.org, go there. You can find all the info there. And if you want a Mass chapter in your city and it looks like you need one in Philadelphia, invite us and we'll come.
Great. Well, thank you so much for talking with us. And I hope we get to see more from both of you in your own ways. And we're so blessed to have you two here again and this film again to be part of yet again of our festival. So
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Elliot. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thanks, guys.